Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jonah, the 3rd chapter. And the word of the Lord Yahweh came on to Jonah the 2nd time, saying, Arise, go on to Nineveh, that great city, and preach unto it the preaching that I bid thee. So whatever it is that I tell you to go and say to them, go over there and preach that unto them. So Jonah arose and went on to Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord Yahweh. Now, as you read the book of Jonah, it's only 4 chapters, but you can see that it's written in a way where it's comprising only the highlights of this situation, right, of this event that we're reading about. So oftentimes the details in between are omitted, okay, and it's mainly just the main points of this historical event that happened, okay, and you have to keep that in mind. So in any case, Jonah goes, right, now Nineveh was an exceeding great city of 3 days' journey, and when you read that in another translation, it's basically saying, you know, it would take you about 3 days to really get through the whole land. It says here, NLT, this time Jonah obeyed the Lord's command and went to Nineveh, a city so large that it took 3 days to see it all. And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey. So about a day's journey in the city, he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. And it tells you here in going to verse 5 that when the people heard it, they believed God, right? But as I mentioned before, these are the main points, okay? On a more practical level, you can imagine he probably said more, okay, and explain more. Because if you just say, yet 40 days, Nineveh shall be overthrown, people are going to inquire, right? What do you mean? What's going on? What's going on here? Probably finding out, who is he, okay? Oh, a prophet of Israel, the people of Israel, and so on. And you know, it's important to remember that at this point, there has been an establishment of Israel, who they were, and who their God is, right? And how they, the prophets and so on and so forth that have been among them. So even though these people in Assyria were all the way in Assyria and they were people of Assyria, right, Assyrians, they had still heard, just like the neighboring nations, concerning the Lord, the different things he did, the different prophets, Elisha, and so on and so forth. Okay, so likely haven't heard, right, who Jonah was and what the message that God gave him is. Yeah, the same God that brought that destruction on Egypt, the same God that flooded the earth, the same God who put his fear upon the known world based on his actions. You know, at that point, they said, yo, hold on. Let's not mess around over here now. So the people of Nineveh believed God and proclaimed a fast, and put on sackcloth, from the greatest of them even to the least of them. So they went into a state of mourning for fear of losing their kingdom. For word came on to the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne, and he laid his robe from him, and covered him with sackcloth, and sat in ashes. So even up until the king at that time, when he heard that, out of that fear, oh shoot, he basically, as it says, he also covered himself in a attire of mourning and went into a state of mourning, basically to humble themselves, because they were doing a lot of debauchery, all right, and also a lot of violence. They were known for being a very violent people, right, and flaying their enemies, impaling them, a lot of extraness, right, that wasn't needed. And he caused it to be proclaimed and published throughout Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, saying, Let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed nor drink water. So basically everybody got to fast, even the animals. But let man and beast be covered with sackcloth, and cry mightily unto God. Yea, let them turn every one from his evil way, and from the violence that is in their hands. Who can tell if God will repent and turn away from his fierce anger, that we perish not? Right? So basically they were just humbling down, hoping that the God that Jonah came and prophesied to them about, would preserve their kingdom, that he wouldn't actually overthrow it in that 40 days. Because keep in mind, like the Lord also judges these nations according to the wickedness they do, even though they're not like Israel and they haven't been given our law, statutes, and commandments. Well, if you look at I think I mentioned this before, the heathens that were in the land before Israel, right, in the promised land, the Lord mentioned, right, that he's driving them out for their wickedness, right? He's bringing that judgment upon them for their wickedness. Verse 10, and God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God repented of the evil, right? It's also kind of like how, interestingly enough, the very same Assyrians, remember they had, after deporting the northern kingdom out of their land, they imported heathens, right, into the land. And the scriptures tell you that the heathens were being slain of lions and so on, because they were polluting the land. They were doing, abominable things in a holy land. And so a priest was sent onto them to teach them the ways of God. And once they started doing that, the lions ceased. See? So the Lord could have just said, well, F that, because you're heathens, I'm still going to just annihilate you all. But he didn't. So it says here, God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way and repented for the evil. So for a period of time, right, they stopped. They all ceased from all the wild, wicked, abominous things they were doing, right, humbled down. But once again, that was for a period of time, because we know they end up getting destroyed later, because guess what? That humility, that peace, that humbling, it didn't last. It definitely did not last long. It says here that he had said that he would do unto them, and he did it not. And I mean, similarly, even with Israel, right? The Lord, he'll say he's about to do something. Israel, cries out to him, and then he chills out, and then they go right back to it. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the book of Jonah, the 3rd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.